This is what, number 9? Yeah, number 9. Lesson 9 today on the afterlife. So maybe we'll be done today, heaven, or maybe next week. Don't know, just depending how long it takes, because we had 7 points last week, but we only did 2. Okay, so just depending on where it goes. But the essence of heaven, what we talked about was the presence of God. Okay, and then the week after that, we talked about descriptions of what the new earth is like. And that was, we talked about it being a kingdom. We talked about it being a city. We talked about being a home, a garden, and a party. Okay, or an area of praise. And as if you noticed, with all 5 of those, they're all physical. Okay, and it's important because the 2 things we talked about last week, remember, what we're talking about today and maybe next week is renewal. Okay, so the essence of the afterlife, the very essence of it is renewal. Okay, so we have this concept of like heaven being a totally different reality, or the afterlife being a totally different reality. It is, but it isn't. And the reason why I say it isn't is because it's physical in nature, and we're physical right now. So we have glimpses as far as what the afterlife will be. Okay, so we talked about number 1, it being renewed in a physical world. Okay, we talked about the new Jerusalem, the new earth, new resurrected bodies. So resurrected bodies implies a physical place. A physical body represents a physical location. And the ideas of a new LA, a new New York, a new Rome, a new whatever cities were in the world. I don't know how it's going to look like, but we get this idea from the New Jerusalem. And then we talked about renewed work, right? So what does work look like? So again, a lot of people, what am I going to do in heaven, right? Am I going to sit on a cloud? Am I going to sing for 24 hours? Like I can only sing for like a couple minutes. You know, some people, they can sing for a while, some people can't, right? There's this ministry called IHOP. Have you guys heard of IHOP? Yeah. It's in Kansas City, but there's an extension in Pasadena called PIHOP, but it's literally 24-hour prayer.
Wow.
So worship/prayer. Like, so you'll have a band and they'll just rotate. You'll do from like 3 hours, 2 hours, 3 hours, and people will come and they'll just play the guitar like at 3 a.m, 5, like 24 hours.
Wow.
I think PIHOP is 24/6. Yeah, they take 1 day off. And they take 1 day off, I believe. Right? But people have this concept that that's what heaven's going to be like. You're just sitting in front of a band or music, and Jesus is just on a chair, and we're just singing. And some people, they don't like that idea because realistically, you know, from the bottom of your heart, regardless of how much you love Jesus, that gets tiring. Doesn't mean you don't love Jesus, but I'm saying the expression of praise, right?
Well, it loses its excitement.
Exactly. On Monday, it was, that's also it's very special because I don't really see El Segundo like that. As far as like the parade, like everyone was cheering, but what I'm saying is like imagine that was 24 hours, or just if that went a little longer, people would have got tired, right? they would have been over it. But there's a balance, is what I'm trying to say. There has to be a balance, and I am talking to the state of our souls, of what keeps it going, what keeps it vibrant. And remember, we talked about purpose. The very essence of work is to produce purpose inside of your heart, and this is God that created it. Okay, so and you probably know this from your own heart. If you were to be honest with yourself, if you wake up and you have nothing to do, you wake up and you literally have nothing to do, there's going to be some voice inside of you that's going to make you feel insignificant. And you're going to battle that. And you're going to have to do something to combat what you feel deep inside. And what that is it's a lack of purpose. Right? But when you do something, there's a sense of, oh, I did X, Y, and Z. And as a result, my purpose is fulfilled. Accomplishment. Some of my friends, they play puzzles, right? And I'm not good with puzzles, okay, but there's these 1,000-piece puzzles.
I don't do it.
But
I do.
but some people are good, some people aren't. You start with the edges and you find the colors and all that. But like me, I try to, as I zone in on a shape. Obviously, when the edges and things are, I zone in on a shape and I look for that shape. But let's just say there's 1,000 pieces and I get 2 pieces. Every single time I get a piece, you feel I contributed. I contributed to this 1,000-piece puzzle, even though I got 1 or 2, right? But it's that sense of purpose. I did something. I contributed to the whole. Versus you did nothing. You're like, you feel a little down. You feel I didn't do much. So right. And this language of the soul is ingrained inside all of us, and it was there before the fall, right? Where he said to Adam, "Go and be a gardener. Look after the plants." Right. This is before, again, the fall. So again, the renewed work is an extension as far as what the new earth will be. Okay. So work right now, we know it's tiring. It's unfair. There's people, they get paid millions of dollars and they barely do anything. Some of us, we work so hard, it's like barely get paid anything. Unjust pay or bosses. Sometimes we don't like our bosses. Sometimes we don't like our people we work with. It's just, that's human nature. Most of the world, and again, I'm being honest, most of the world, their form of work was slavery. Okay? Their form of work was, and when I say slavery, we think Exodus or you're being whipped in the back. No, what I mean by slavery was there was always a contract between you and some master in order to pay. But again, for thousands of years, okay, this is what happened until Abraham Lincoln in the United States. So again, it's big. I don't think people see the implication of the Republic of Abraham Lincoln and the United States and all, because like I was having this conversation with a black Israelite earlier this week. It got pretty intense, but he pretty much believes that if there's the 12 tribes of Israel are all black countries, right? And the real Jews are people who are black. So God is obviously for his people, the Jews. And if you're not, then you are eventually going to go into slavery. You are eventually going to be in hell. And Jesus is the one that's going to usher everyone to hell. So that pretty much is everyone here, all of us. But when he was talking, he brought obviously Columbus and what they did to the Native Americans and all that. And I said, yeah, it was terrible, but slavery was universal. It existed at that time throughout the entire world and for thousands of years before that. The whole Bible, the book of Exodus, you see slavery with the Jews. In Christ's time, there was slavery there. Another almost 2,000 years after that, there was still slavery, right? So it looked different, but my point is it was universal. Okay, but that's my point. That is part of the fall. Okay, that is part of the fall, meaning work has been corrupted. Okay, but the essence of I do something and I have a sense of purpose fulfilled will be in the afterlife. Okay, and I get this from Genesis chapter 2. It will be continued, and this is why we went from Genesis with the Garden of Eden and we ended in Revelation with the Garden of Eden. The point, there's a continuity. The presence of God with man. That's it. That's the very essence of our creation. Okay? You want to reject it? Fine. That's a place or a state we call hell. Okay? So the renewed physical world, a renewed work, and third is a renewed emotional state. Okay? A renewed emotional state. Now, what I mean by that is we're image bearers of God. Okay? Remember when we talked about hell? When we talk about hell, we think of the nature of it, like the fire, the brimstone, what it looks like, because that's where our minds go. But we never think of the psychology of it. Remember, before you're a body, you're a soul, and your soul feels. You feel happy, you feel sad, you feel anxious, right? Every single person, because you're a soul. That's just what the soul does. So, in the afterlife of hell, it is utter unfulfillment, complete loneliness, complete isolation. Yeah.
But the thing.
Could you lower the blind, Kevin, a little?
like lower it?
Yeah, just to bring it down. So. No, go ahead. That's perfect, thank you.
The thing with like how God made us is like we are a soul. Like we are a soul, but He didn't make us just a soul. Like it's a complete package. So it's like He made us a body and a soul. So He had a purpose with both, even though like our flesh is corrupt and we're sinful. But that's why He's gonna give us a new morally perfect soul and a new body, because He created it together to work together. Because it's like I can't imagine like just being a spirit and then just not being able to move my hand when I talk.
Right. But this is why I'm really emphasizing the physical nature of the new earth, is because that's everyone's perception of what heaven is. Like you're Casper the Ghost, you're floating from place. It'd be fun, interesting, but I think there'd be a point where like, all right, now what? Right? It's like a toy, you know what I mean? Like you can fly, you have a boat, but people get tired of these new experiences. But what I'm saying is like the experiences of the heart, the soul, no, you're always going to want to have a sense of purpose and you want to fulfill it, So again, when it comes to heaven, it's the exact opposite of hell. Okay, so what I mean by that is, remember, there's always glimpses of heaven and hell today, here on this earth. Okay, let me read to you guys. This is Peter Kraft, and he says, hell begins in this life, and in the same sense, heaven does too. Okay, its seed is planted here. The blessed will say they always have been in heaven, and the damned will say they've always been in hell. So even here on earth, someone is in a state, right now, either we are in a state of heaven or in a state of hell. Our heart, our posture, okay? And this goes to a discussion we had in the book of Proverbs last year. Remember how I emphasized the disordering of the heart versus the reordering of the heart? Okay? So Augustine, who is a church father, noticed that his generation was so unhappy. And he said, why is everyone unhappy? Kind of like our generation, right? And he said the very essence of it is a disordered heart, or disordered loves, meaning that there are loves inside of their heart that love the secondary, the thirdary, the fourthary things first, above the primary thing, which is God. So God in their heart is probably number 4, number 5 as far as priority. So as a result, they love so many things above God, and we're not created for that. So mental health arises, anxiety, and all the sadness, misery comes into play. Okay, so it's Proverbs 13:12 where it says, "Hope deferred makes the heart sick." Okay, there's a desire that we have. There's always desires, human desires that we have, but if they're not fulfilled, you have a sick heart, right? The person that wants to be loved, that wants to be affirmed, if they don't have that, they will have a sick heart, right? And you can kind of see it in our time. Okay, can someone read Revelation 21 verse 4, Revelation 21 verse 4, and Revelation 19 verse 1 to 8. Okay, Revelation chapter 21 verse 4, Revelation chapter 19 verse 1 to 8.
And He shall wipe away every tear from their eyes, and there shall no longer be any death, there shall no longer be any mourning, or crying, or pain. The first things have passed away.
This is in reference to the new earth, right? No more pain, no more sorrow. Okay? So again, that's hell. Hell will be constant misery, constant pain. But the new earth, there's a removal of it. Okay? So what does the new earth look like? So Revelation 19, 1 to 8. Revelation 19, 1 to 8.
After this, I heard. Trish, you can go.
No, go ahead.
After this, I heard what sounded like a roar of great multitude in heaven shouting, Hallelujah. Salvation and glory and power belong to our God. For true and just are his judgments. He has condemned the great prostitute who corrupted the earth by her adulteries. He has avenged on her blood of his servants. And again they shouted, Hallelujah. The smoke from her goes up from forever and ever. The 24 elders and the 4 living creatures fell down and worshiped God who was seated at the throne, and they cried, Amen, Hallelujah. Then a voice came from the throne saying, Praise our God, all you servants, you who fear him, both small and great. Then I heard what sounded like a great multitude, like a roar of rushing waters, like a loud peal of thunder, and shouting, Hallelujah. For the Lord God Almighty reigns. Let us rejoice and be glad and give him glory. For the wedding of the Lamb has come, and the bride has made herself ready. Did you say through 7?
8.
Fine linen, bright and clean, was given to her to wear. Fine linen stands for the righteous acts of the saints.
Okay, so that is obviously a passage about rejoicing. Okay, so there's a fulfillment as far as the human heart. You know, one of the major criticisms of heaven is that heaven is boring, right? How many of you guys have heard that before? Heaven is boring. I want to read to you guys a quote. He said, this is an author. Okay, he says, I don't want to go to heaven that I learned when I was a kid. To me, it seems boring. This is from none other than Stephen King. Okay, right? But again, a lot of other people, they have this concept that I don't want to go to this heaven as far as it's purposeless. You're just on the clouds. You're singing. What am I going to do? Right? To them, it's an utter sense of boredom. Now, when we talk about boredom or entertainment, remember this: it is never external. Boredom or entertainment is never external. It's first internal, meaning that there's a sense of interest that you have towards it. Doesn't mean I never even mentioned what it is, right? It is first a change of heart. You're interested in it. Okay, so say you're at so you know those raves. You ever hear people rave or like some rock concert or something like that? To some people, they love that. They're interested. It's within their heart. So they go to a concert and they're like they're entertained, right? Why? Because of what the state of their heart. Other people can be in the exact same mosh pit or rave or rock concert, and they'll be so uncomfortable. They will look at it and say that is boring. Why? Because they're not interested in it. There's no inclination that their heart has towards it, right? They can go to some people, these young girls, they go to a Taylor Swift concert and it's like they're crying. It's just like a spiritual experience that they're having, and that's their experience, right? Their experience, they have this interest in their heart. Some people will go there and they're like, what's the big deal, right? People spend all this money, line up, but again, it's what? It's not external, it's what? It's internal. It's really what you love, you see? So it's or like a football game. Some people, they go to it, it's a religion, you know? People call it football America's #1 religion. But other people, they'll just, this is boring, I don't get it. They'll fall asleep or just there for the hot dog or, you know, like just, right, the food or the experience. But like as far as the game, it's boring. Let's be honest, most people who come to the Super Bowl, they watch it because of the halftime show or the social event. They don't who won? Right? There's a good amount of people but what I'm saying is it's internal. You see? When it comes to the new earth, when it comes to heaven, this whole idea of it being boring is not a result of what heaven is externally, it's a result of what's in the person's heart. So to them, they are dead to God. Remember, there are glimpses of heaven and hell here today, right? The glimpse of heaven is you find God, you love God, right? God has some sense of excitement in your heart. Other people, they just hate God. Other people, they just dread the idea of God, right? We can go deeper as far as their motivations, but that's about it. So anything of God, it's immediate. So for that person, Hell is consistent with their character. Hell is consistent with their form of interest. So if you were to put that person's with that state of heart before Christ, they'll be repulsed. Even though they know Christ is true, even though they know the Bible is true at that state. But if their heart is not changed, they're not going to find it entertaining. They'll look at heaven and be like, this is boring, right? At the end of the day, it really comes to a change of heart. You see that? Also, heaven, or look at the Apostle Paul in Road to Damascus. This is a man that utterly hated Christianity. Right? He looked around trying to kill Christians, and all of a sudden, transformation happened. Did anything happen externally? No. It was a change of his heart. The religion that he was so passionate to destroy, he became one of the biggest proponents that he built. He was one of the major contributors as far as the spread of Christianity. Okay? What happened? The change of heart. Okay? Remember, when we talk about heaven, we're talking about a renewed emotional state. Okay? We are emotional creatures, and there will be a renewed emotional state in the new earth. Remember, we talked about hope deferred makes the heart sick. At the end of the day, our hearts, every single one of our souls, has some sense of a lack of fulfillment in it. It's true. If we were to be honest with ourselves, are we 100% complete, fulfilled? No, there's always needs that we have. But in the new earth, there will be 100% fulfillment of these desires that we have. Okay, so remember, there's the psychology of the new earth. There's the psychology of the new heavens. Okay, remember, every desire we have here on this earth, there's always a greater desire underneath it. Okay, so here's what I mean by that. G.K. Chesterton, he's a British author, said that I'll read to you. He says, the man who rings the bell at a brothel unconsciously does so seeking after God. Okay, so the man that's at a brothel or seeking a prostitute, subconsciously, he is crying out for God. Okay, and this is what Chesterton means, is that the man who thinks that he needs to be with a woman or a prostitute at a brothel, what he really wants subconsciously is to be known. What he wants is intimacy. What he wants is a connection, right? I never said with who. I just named general affirmations of the human heart. But God is the ultimate fulfillment of all those things that he wants. But again, we live in a fallen world, and as a result, what? We have our hearts are disproportionate. Remember, God is probably number 3, number 5, number 6 in this gentleman's life. So as a result, he still wants to be affirmed. He still wants to be loved. He's right, but there's a distortion of those desires. So as a result, he goes to a brothel. You see, in the new earth, there's a complete fulfillment of being known. Okay, we're struggling here in the United States as far as there's an epidemic of loneliness that people experience. Right? It's like the population just gets more and more and more and more. I think we're like past 8 billion globally, right? But people are becoming increasingly more lonely. Even with social media and our apps, there's no pill, there's no button, there's no app you can press that can fulfill your sense of loneliness, right? You need another person, but that happens through life. You need a connection with that person. You can be with a lot of people, right? But you might not connect with them. But you connect with the people that there's a commonality, right? So my point is that in heaven, all our major desires will be fulfilled. Okay? All our major desires will be fulfilled. Any questions?
Did you say what we are going to do in heaven? Was that last week?
We talked about work. We talked about work. And we talked about the types of work. But again, so right now, okay, Joanna, right now, this is, I'm trying not to be very dogmatic and be like, okay, this is what the first couple hours ahead is going to be like, and then there's this. Because we don't know. But we can speculate certain things. So as far as work, like we read some passages in the book of Isaiah and in the book of Revelation that speak of work in the afterlife, right? And a continuity of Genesis chapter 2. We looked at the resurrected body of Christ and what he did, what he was able to do. Like he ate fish. Well, we be able to eat in the afterlife. If there's food, does it imply there's a lack, right? Because you get hungry, right? So things like that. We speculate. Will heaven or the new earth be a place of pescatarianism, meaning that you can eat vegetables and fish, right? And the reason why I say that is because people debate there are soulish animals with souls versus animals without souls. And I think if we were to be honest, we can observe these animals. Like a dog, that has a soul. There's personality. It has consciousness. It can obey commands. A seal, a killer whale, like you see it like SeaWorld, right? They follow commands. But a fish, they're just like very robotic, right? There's certain animals that are just very robotic, and some scholars speculate that there's no soul in these animals. So as a result, it's like eating a plant, right? So again, but this is all speculation. I'm not saying it. I'm throwing it up there. It kind of makes sense, right? Because we're going to talk about animals in a bit. But again, we'll have to look like with animals. Okay. Back to desire. Our hearts, it's like a black hole of desire. We always want. You experience the fulfillment. You want more. That's why addicts can't get enough of whatever someone's addicted to. But again, the black hole of our heart will be fulfilled in the new earth. And as a result, there's no sense of boredom. There's a sense of interest towards Christ. Okay? Martin Luther said, if we're not allowed to laugh in heaven, I don't want to go there. Right? Laughter, rejoicing. That's why we read Revelation chapter 19. Okay? Another quote is, a boring, joyless Christian is a bad advertisement for heaven. Right? A boring Christian or a joyless Christian is bad advertisement. It's true. Okay? So again, glimpses of heaven and hell here on this earth. Look at the mental health, right? That's hell. That person's in a state of hell. But again, in heaven or in the new earth, there's complete fulfillment. Okay, Kevin?
The thing about Paul, he had purpose in his life before he encountered Christ. So his purpose was being the Jew of the Jews and, knowing the scripture, and all that stuff. So he had purpose. So it's like he encountered Christ, but it's like Christ gave him a new purpose. And so his heart didn't change until he was in the glory room or whatever, and then he changed his heart. But it's like, I think he had purpose before that. It just
yeah. Remember this?
No, I'm just saying. No, I was just thinking about it. I'm just picturing, a guy that is like, a guy like Paul and just all the stuff that they say about him, and then just, it's like he has a purpose. He just ends up being like against the church, but it was just that he gets a new purpose and a new heart. Yeah. It was just interesting, like, just to think about it. I mean, it's like, I don't know. I was just thinking about, like...
Well, work and purpose, remember, I never said you don't have to be a believer to have a sense of fulfilled purpose in your life. Non-believers, they go up and they're more... Some people, they're more purpose than believers. I'm just saying it's a general principle of life of I have something to do. My purpose, there's a sense of accomplishment, fulfillment, right? So, again, it's a principle, but it's a God-given principle, right? So, if anyone who knows these principles, it's Jews, right? They follow this to the very T of work, of understanding, like the relationship with the human heart and work. Okay. So, do you want to turn on the lights, or are we good?
I'll turn on the lights.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm like super slow because I'm like super tired.
Oh, you're good. So, a renewed physical world, a renewed work environment, a renewed emotional state, and get this, a renewed reward or class system. Okay, a little controversial for me to say that, but hear me out. Okay, we all make it to the new earth. We all make it to heaven by faith in Christ. Not by works, okay? Not by works, but by faith in Christ. Okay, all of us. If you make it to the new earth Okay, I'm going to say the new earth as a replacement of heaven, because when we think of heaven, we think of it flying in the clouds. In the new earth, you are there because of the work of Christ. You put your faith in the work of Christ. Okay? Now, the Bible also speaks about your good works here on this earth. Okay? But, okay, there's a sense that we for us Christians, we believe that if I die, I go to heaven, we'll all be equal. Right? We'll just... But the Bible doesn't use that language. Okay? The reason why is because the Bible uses repeatedly the concept of reward. Okay? You ever think when you read the Bible, it talks about like crowns, it talks about rewards, but it's always in the afterlife. And to us, it's like, it's too grand, it's too magical to put together. It's like, no. I think some people are going to have more rewards, more crowns, more maybe more physical things than other people in the afterlife. And it's not because I say that, it's because the Bible says it over and over and over again, right? Your reward in heaven, your reward in heaven. Okay? Matthew chapter 5. Matthew chapter 5. Can someone read verse 11 and 12? Matthew chapter 5, 11 and 12. Matthew 5, 11 to 12. Matthew 5, 11, 12.
Blessed are you, men, reviling you and persecute you, and say all kinds of evil against you falsely on account of me. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward in heaven is great, for so they persecuted the prophets who were before you.
Okay. Virginia, also chapter 6, 1 to 6. 6, 1 to 6. Matthew 6, 1 to 6. Matthew 6, 1 to 6.
Go ahead.
Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. If you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. So when you give to the needy, do not announce it with trumpets, as the hypocrites do in synagogues and on the streets, to be honored by others. Truly I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. 1 to what?
No,
6?
that's perfect. It's perfect. So wait, rewards if I do something, no rewards if I, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the language. Okay, so one more. 1 Corinthians 3. I think Trish, you asked this a couple of weeks ago. 1 Corinthians 3, 11 to 15. 1 Corinthians 3, 11 to 15.
For no man can lay a foundation other than the one which is laid, which is Christ Jesus. Now if any man builds upon a foundation with gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, straw, each man's work will become evident, for the day will show it, because it is to be revealed with fire, and the fire itself will test the quality of each man's work. If any man's work which he has built upon it remains, he shall receive a reward. If any man's work is burned up, he shall suffer loss, but he himself shall be saved, yet so as through fire.
Okay. So
What does that mean?
all these passages go on with the theme of you build your life on Christ as far as for salvation, but again, there are works that you do here, okay? Our lives. Let's be honest, some people live more of a faithful life, more of a selfless life than other people, than other Christians, right? Now, just like we talked. Joanne, sorry. Remember you asked me that question about hell, and the different stages, and I forgot to explain this because we went over. But remember how I sent you guys text messages of like the 9 levels of hell? Remember that there was 9 levels, and it was really under the earth. That is a painting of Dante's Inferno. Okay, and remember that's fiction. I want to clarify that. That's fiction. But the idea was that there's 9 level compartments of hell. Okay, now when we talked about hell and the different stages, we talked about 3 prerequisites as far as different degrees, but we were never specific about it. That was the thing. So when it comes to hell, we talked about the 3 prerequisites of how you engage your personal sin, like how much did a person give over to their personal sin. Number 2, did that person influence other people to sin or to fall far from God? And number 3, that person, were they a teacher? Did they teach people? We're all teachers in some sense, right? Teachers as far as did they communicate false doctrine? Did they influence, right? So as a result, there's different compartments of hell. Does that make sense? So again, but as far as specifics, we don't know. I want to clarify that. But remember that principle. It still carries on into heaven or the new earth. You see that? So, okay, guys, we're gonna exit because we're under 2 minutes, and we'll come right back on. Okay, so we'll exit and come right back to the same link. Okay. Any questions, guys?
I mean, I don't know. It just seems having a class system in heaven that makes me like. I'm not gonna say I don't want to be there, but it just makes me like God. I mean, God is amazing, and like His work on earth is amazing, and like Him living through you is amazing, and His loving kindness is amazing. But honestly, like, if I'm thinking of a caste system or a class system, like I've seen here on Earth and how I've traveled, it's like I don't want to be a part of that.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. I think all of our minds say the same thing, because again, like we all believe in Jesus. It should just be this flat line as far as.
Because it's always like honestly, it's like the CEOs getting paid, bonuses, and their bonus is like $20 million, and then it's like all the workers can barely pay their mortgage, and it's like all that type of crap. So it's like, do I want to see like these freaking guys like getting $20 million bonuses in heaven just because it's just
okay? But I'm being honest. Are you filtering that through a fallen lens though?
Yeah, no. I just think it just, to me it's annoying like to have the disparity, and just it's like I think it says somewhere in the Bible where it's like the people cry out because of their wages aren't
right,
it's like
right.
Wages.
Injustice, that's the fall of work. But again, it's not going to be like that in the new earth.
Yeah.
So remember, when I say class system, try not to mean like attitude, because we when I say class system, we filter it through our own context, right? But the reason why I say class system is because I don't know any other term or word to use as far as some people will have more than others. We're all going to have God. We're all going to have Christ, and that's what matters.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's not everything. And the reason why I say that, remember, we're physical creatures, and remember, all the passages we read, okay, talk about reward or no reward. So if someone lived a faithful life, they're going to have more rewards than the person that did not, right? So again, I don't know how you word that, right? As far as someone has more, someone has what's the reward? I have no clue, right? Remember, physical nature. Will someone be in the New Jerusalem and someone be in the New LA? I like to be in the New Jerusalem, right? but I'm throwing these, and this is where we can't be dogmatic as far as the afterlife. We have to speculate.
Well, I don't think we will feel unhappy or jealous of someone who has this here on earth. We might envy someone. Gosh, they didn't do anything but look all they have or
Right,
whatever.
right.
But I don't think in the new earth, even if someone has more, I don't think we're going to look at them
100%.
under the same eyes we look at people now. We'll be happy for everybody
Yep.
because it's a happy world.
Bonnie?
Do you think instead of calling it class, that you could call it personality, or people that actually get things done? I mean, if you're with a group of people and you want to do things, good things, and the people there are the type of person that, no, I just want to do this or that or the other, it would be kind of complicated. Whereas if you get a group of people together that relate to each other,
Yeah.
like-minded.
Like-minded, yeah.
Yeah, because money is not involved. That's usually what we think of in class, when we talk about
Right,
class.
right.
There's no money involved. But there are, you're interacting with a certain group forever.
And it's another good question is, like, we talked about work. Here, work and money go hand in hand. But again, in a garden, you're working, but is there currency? So will there be currency the new earth?
Maybe
Right.
we barter.
Right. Well, but I'm just again. We're last week we talked about, what jobs will be in the new earth, which jobs won't be in the new earth, right? But again, these are things we throw up in the air. We can speculate, but it's you.
I think we're all going to be grateful for
100%.
whatever we
Absolutely.
have. And you see people that have low wages and maybe a lower position in life, but they're always happy.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think
Yeah,
we're all,
yeah.
I mean, he already tells us it's going to be a wonderful place. There won't be any pain. There won't be, so we're not going to feel that way. I don't think we're going to be envious or feel, oh, you have more than I do. And
Right.
it's not important, because the important thing is that we're all with God.
Matthew 20 verse 16 says, "So the last will be first, and the first will be last." In reference to the again, there's first and there's last. Again, this is kind of why I had to use the word class, because again, all I'm saying is, in the new earth, in the afterlife, there's going to be people that have more than others. However you want to phrase
And
that.
what though? I mean,
And that's what I'm saying. It says reward, it says crowns, but what specifically does that mean? We don't know. Okay? But remember this principle, okay? And this is a principle we could use here on earth and also in the afterlife that kind of makes sense. But standards of significance, expressions of superiority. Okay? Standards of significance, expressions of superiority. Okay? And what I mean by that is this. Standards of significance. All of us, me, you, all you guys have something in your heart, and I'm even talking other than God, other than Christ, that you use as a standard for your personal significance. Okay? You use it for your personal significance, meaning you attach yourself to it. You might be good at it, might be a talent or whatever. And as a result, you feel significance from it. Okay? I don't know what that is. Okay? And as a result, okay, this is everyone, past, present, future. Remember, principles we're talking about. As a result, whatever that standard is, you will also use as a means to express superiority above people. Okay? And here's what I mean by that. For example, let's just say knowledge. Knowledge is your standard of significance. Okay? That's you love knowledge, and it makes you significant. It makes you have a sense of worth in this life. Okay? So that's personal for you. Expressions of superiority. As a result, remember this, okay? I'm going to look at people like this. Okay? A diagonal line. And what I mean by this diagonal line is, let's just say I'm right here. What this is, it's a standard of knowledge. Because that's my, right? It's your standard of significance. Knowledge makes you significant. So let's take this bent line, right? This line here. And if you're right here, okay, expressions of superiority, you will naturally, your fallen heart will naturally look down upon everyone underneath you that you're more smarter than. But, and you can lie to yourself and be like, I don't care what people think. What you mean is the people underneath that you're more smarter than. But you're not the smartest person in the world. There's this gap right here, right? And as a result, you will honor them. you will revere them. You see that? Standards of significance, expressions of superiority. Okay? Now, the danger of this thing, right? This mindset is our standards of significance are subjective. So one person could use knowledge as their standard of significance. Another person could use wealth. Very common here, right? As their standard of significance. And for them, it's also this crooked, this diagonal, this line right here. And if they're right here, in the column of wealth, in whatever society they live in, their standard of significance is wealth, but expresses superiority. They will look down upon those who are more poor than them. But they will also honor. They will look up to the people that have more money. You see that? And the weird thing about this whole principle is that you can have a person in one room that their significance comes from knowledge, and another person in the same room that has their significance in wealth, and the person who attaches significance to intelligence is looking down at the guy, okay? Because he's underneath. And the guy with more money, who uses for his significance, is looking down at the guy who is more smarter. But they're both looking down on each other. You see what I'm saying? And again, why do we do this? It's a fallen world. It's ingrained within every single one of us. This is why the Bible repeatedly talks about never look down upon anyone. Never look down upon anyone, right? And we think about this principle, right? We do this unknowingly. We do this unknowingly. Whatever it is, you really need to dig down deep in your heart and ask yourself, what gives me value? What gives me worth? You might say Jesus, but I mean, like, okay, really? Because you're not perfect. None of us are perfect. But there's something in this life that has given us a sense of identity, a sense of worth, a sense of value, that we feel good about ourselves because we attach ourselves to it, right? And culturally, historically, it's always been ethnicity. It's always been your financial status. It's always been your appearance, right? These things that we value, and if you're a specific ethnicity or you have a certain amount of wealth or appearance, you're up top, right? The bourgeoisie, okay, you're up top. But then all of a sudden there's other ethnicities that go down, and it's those who are the least attractive, the most broke, they're the outcasts, so they're at the bottom. You see? You know what the dangerous thing here in the United States? We have this subconsciously, right? We have this. Every culture does this, by the way, okay? But you know what you see politically? You know what we see in the mainstream media? Instead of denying this, we flip it, right? And we take an ethnicity or whatever it is, and now we promote it and we demonize those who are on top. And we're kind of seeing that today. Okay? Now, regardless, wherever your heart attaches its significance to, this right here is a broken system. What you want to do, and those who have the eyes of the kingdom, who are truly humble and have died to self, they don't look at life like this, they don't look at other people, they look at it as a flat line. You see that? So, Philippians chapter 3. Paul, what? I'm a Jew. Forgot I'm a Jew. I'm a Benjamite, right? I'm a right. I got 3 PhDs. How much do you have? Right? Wealth. He gave up his wealth as a Pharisee. He's a Roman citizen. He didn't even say that in Philippians 3. But the list goes on as far as accomplishments. Paul was the top right here, right? But he's like it's flawed. It's rubbish. And as a result, you look at people like this. So those who are the best looking, those who are on top of society, those who have money, right? Someone could be at that state. But you can also have the eyes and you look at someone else that doesn't have money, that's not as attractive, right? But no one is better. You look at them the exact same. But culturally, remember, what you attach your significance to, we always do this. But the eyes of those who are the kingdom, you look at life like this. You see that? So in the new earth, okay, this standard of significance is Christ. That is it, Philippians chapter 3. The standard of significance that we view other people, ourselves, is that of Christ. So when you see people through a line like this. You see that? So even now, back to rewards and crowns in heaven, if someone has more than you in the new earth, you're still going to look at things like this. Because why? You've been changed. That's why we talked about emotions first. renewed emotions, renewed soul, versus and then we talked about what some classes, because you're not going to look at people with envy, with jealousy, with anger, right? Look at the first family of humanity, right? Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel. Right away, brother killing brother because of envy, right? Because he looked at he looked at life like this. All of us are guilty of that. Okay. Rich Reed. Remember his memorial? He says, "You're special. All of us are special, right? But not special than anyone else. Not more special than anyone else." And that's, sometimes self-esteem. You want to build someone up. You want to, say you're special. You're unique. You're gifted, which is great. But to the insecure heart, that person could take that and go to the moon with it. Right, and then in their head, they're better than everyone else. They're special, and what that means is that everyone else is not special, and that's the danger of that. That's the danger of this line right here. Because when you call someone special, they're thinking they're right up here, meaning they're better than everyone else. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Kevin, did you have a question?
No, I mean, I think part of that continuum is that, it's the humility that God requires for people that enter the kingdom. Is if you don't humble yourself, and Paul was humbled, he was humbled on his horse or whatever.
Yeah.
He was humbled in God's presence. If we don't humble ourselves in God's presence, then it's like, then the continuum doesn't matter. Like it says, humble yourselves therefore under the mighty hand of God, and in due time He'll lift you up.
Right.
So it's just like humility is big for God. It's anyone
100%.
in the kingdom is not going to be everyone in the. Okay, so that's one thing that I enjoy about the kingdom, forthcoming kingdom, and the one now, is that there's humility.
Yeah.
And that's really big in the afterlife too, is like being humble. And it's like, if you're in the presence of God, like, nobody wants like arrogance or like it's just being humble and enjoying fellowship, enjoying His presence is, I mean, that's all I need in heaven. I don't need like a house. It's just like what else do you need? You're in God's presence. Like, do you need anything else? No.
Did you?
He mentions a lot in the Bible, there are many mansions.
Well, that's kind of, this is kind of why I bring it up, is that, remember, to us, if we have the concept of heaven being like we're Casper the Ghost, we're disembodied for, you know what I mean? Like we're angels flying, like that passage, John 14, it makes no sense. Like, what do you mean how mansions, right? But if you view the afterlife as a physical state, as a renewed earth, it makes sense, right? And that was my first point, right? Of it's a renewed physical state, meaning there's a renewed earth, there's renewed skies, there's renewed physical bodies, right? But also, like, again, we're going to be living somewhere, right? So that's what I'm saying. I do think there's going to be houses. I do think that there's, and again, will there be people with bigger houses than other people because of reward? I don't know. I'm not saying it. But I'm throwing that up there because, like, again, the Bible talks about reward. The Bible talks about houses. So.
But even Jesus said, "Behold, I go and prepare a place for you. So
right.
Where I am, you can be there also."
Yeah.
So a place, to me, of course, it could mean a new heaven and a new earth, but it also could mean a place to live, a place to
Right.
stay.
Yeah. Again, we think practically here, right? Yeah.
Also, nowadays, or in this life, sometimes you meet someone and let's just say they are very wealthy and you have a preconcept of they're snooty, they have a lot of money, but then you get to know them and they're not like that at all.
Right.
I think it's like we're going to skip that step. It's like we're going to not say somebody has a bigger house, so what? I have my house and you have your house. I don't think we're going to judge each other on these parameters. Because I don't think, that's what I think the difference is between this world and the new earth, is we're not going to live the same way.
Right.
We're not going to have the same values or come with baggage that we have. We're not going to do that. We're going to come with a clean slate, and there's not going to be all that. Or it wouldn't be so welcoming, like to Christians. It's like, yeah, I can't wait to get there. But if it were going to be like on here, on earth, we'd be like, I don't know if I want to go.
But so if I say class system, we think those who are on top, arrogant, snobby, right? But again, I'm looking at that as through a fallen state. And again, it's complete. So think of this. Think of the person, the missionary that no one knew, probably died 21 years old, right, through a disease, or was killed because of some Indians in the jungle. But he gave his life to Christ, and he gave it, he was a true missionary, versus the half-hearted celebrity living in Hollywood Hills. That's a genuine Christian, but they're half-hearted, and they still significantly struggle with pride, and they probably will never preach the gospel once in their life, but they're in heaven. I think there's a flip. I think there's going to be a lot of honor for that 21-year-old missionary that no one knows, or the mother who has 2 kids who have Down syndrome, and she took care of the 2 sons for the rest of her life. That was it. That was her only ministry. I think people like that are going to be the famous people, the people who are honored, versus someone that we know today that everyone admires or wants to be like. In the afterlife, who's that, right? But not with a demeaning heart, as far as, get out of my way kind of thing. But again, I think it's an upside down kingdom. The first will be the last, and last will be first. Right? So again, think of John the Baptist. Just think of his life. Even the way he died. It was totally disrespectful. He was in jail, and some little girl commanded for his head to get cut off and put on a platter. It's humiliating. They cut your head off for humiliation, right? But that was his death. But imagine John the Baptist in the afterlife, in the new earth, right? I don't think it's going to be like that with him, right? It's going to be a completely different reality. Okay, so again, when I say class system, again, remember, there's no ego in the afterlife. There's no pride. There's none of this. We have renewed emotional states. Our pride has been destroyed. Okay, now our hearts our souls are utterly aligned with God. Okay, also, 5th, a renewed sense of growth. Okay, a renewed sense of growth, and here's what I mean by that. In the afterlife, in the new earth, you will continue to grow. You will continue to learn. If you're someone that likes reading books, you like listening to podcasts, you just, within your soul, within inside of you, you enjoy learning. It gives you a sense of purpose. That will continue. Okay? For me, I never could conceive this thought. The reason why is because in heaven, we're all going to be perfect, right? Right? But what does perfection mean? And this is where we made a distinction.
Morally perfect.
Yeah, we made a distinction between moral perfection and total perfection. Moral perfection and total perfection. In the afterlife, we're going to be morally perfect, but the Bible doesn't say we're going to be totally perfect. Okay? Only God is totally perfect. We're going to be morally perfect. So look at the 2 illustrations that we see of moral perfection. We have Adam and Eve, or Adam in particular, and we have Jesus, who lived a life of moral perfection. Okay? But within Adam, if you gave him a book on quantum physics, he would not know what this book is, but he was morally perfect. So moral perfection doesn't mean you know everything, right? We think of, you ever see these Instagram photos of I saw one when Kobe died, of Jesus and Kobe Bryant playing basketball together, right? Right? But when people are imagining these things, they're like, no one's gonna miss because they're in heaven, they're in perfect state. I'm like, no, you can miss. You can miss a basketball. It doesn't mean you're. It means you're not perfect totally, but heaven doesn't promise you that, right? It's moral perfection, okay? And then we have Adam and Eve, and we have Jesus, okay? Now think of Jesus, okay? Jesus was morally perfect. Adam and Eve, they were morally perfect. When Jesus was, the nativity scene in Christmas, right? When we see Jesus being born, he's crying, right? In a manger, right? He's crying. what's the guy in Family? Was it Family Planet? Is that show? There's a show, Family whatever. But there's that baby that talks. There's a cartoon of a baby.
Family Guy?
Family Guy. Yeah, it's a baby that talks, but he's like walking around. He's acting like an adult. But he's a baby. Was Jesus like that? Was he speaking to his parents like, "Hey, according to my hypothesis, right?" Like, was he? No, I think Jesus was. He tried to walk and he fell, because he was a baby, right? And falling down is a mistake, but a mistake is not a sin. Okay? Falling down is a mistake, but falling down is not a sin. Sometimes we have this concept of perfectionism, right? Jesus was a carpenter, right? He had nails. I'm pretty sure there are certain times where he hit his thumb. He made a mistake, but that's not a sin. And the reason why this happened was because what? He's human. You see that? But at the same time, what? He's growing. Okay? Well, Luke chapter 2 verse 4 says, and the child grew and became strong, filled with wisdom, and the favor of God was upon him. Wait, the child what? He grew, okay, and became strong. Also, Luke chapter 2 verse 52 says, Jesus increased in wisdom. Jesus increased in wisdom and stature and favor with God and man. Right? This is where the adults, they saw Christ as a 12-year-old and like, wow, this guy is definitely more wise and superior than everyone else. That's because he was morally perfect. But as a result, he's still able to grow. Right? Why? Because he's human. You know when that passage where it's like someone touched, the woman touched Jesus' cloak, right? And Jesus turned around and says, "Who touched me?" Right? And some people speculate, oh, did Jesus really know? Is it a rhetorical question? No, I think Jesus asked the question, "Who touched me?" because he didn't know who touched him. And he wanted to know who touched him. Why? Because he's human, but he's morally perfect. You see that? Moral perfection. Now, if you ask the question as far as his divine power, remember, he gave that up. His power and all that, and he became reliant on the Holy Spirit to do miracles. Okay? So my point is this. There's moral perfection and there's total perfection, but in the new earth, there's moral perfection. All of us will be morally perfect, right? There's no envy, there's no jealousy. But there's still a sense where you could learn, you can grow, you can build on certain skill sets. Okay?
So, if somebody died at 3 years old, are they gonna grow?
That's next, or no. That's a good question. So Joanne asked if someone dies at 3, or let's just say someone dies at 3 months. We talked about this. What's going to happen with them in the afterlife? So think of David's son. He died like a couple months or moments right after he was born, and there was that prayer that David had and says, "When I die, I'm going to go see him eventually." He knew that he was going to see his son. Now, the question that you ask is, what's going to happen to the mind or the ability? Think of this: if a baby dies at 3 months old, okay, 3 months, are they going to be in the afterlife and have the mindset of a 3-year-old or a 3-month-old for the rest of their life? Right? If someone's 102 and they die at 102, are they going to have that 102-year-old body for the rest of their life?
No, because we get a new body, right?
We have a new body. We can't answer that specifically, but again, I think there's good reasons. I think there's good reasons to believe everyone will be a specific age. So some people, scholars will believe that we're all going to be 30 years old. It's a good age. Like everyone's going to be 30. So you guys, if you're older, you'll go down to, if you're younger, you'll go to 30. So it's speculation, because Christ was 30 when he started his ministry. To be a priest, you have to be 30 years old. But again, this is all speculation. But it's obviously assumed that if you're 3 months, if you're 2 years old, if you're 5, or if you have Down syndrome, right, then you'll automatically have the mindset of like a sharp 30-year-old to your fullest potential. Yeah.
But we're still gonna be learning, like you said.
But you could be learning, yeah.
What about
But mind you, Joanne, notice how I'm not being dogmatic and saying it's gonna be like this, it's gonna be like that. I'm gonna have size 10 feet. You know what I mean? It's not. I'm trying to be as open as possible, right? But I'm using the Bible, but as reasonable as possible too, right? So,
Oh, so he gave us freedom to do what we want.
Yes.
When in heaven, is it going to be that same freedom, or are they going to have our minds kind of set? Like
Okay.
the robot, they say,
Yeah,
we're not
yeah.
robots here, that's why he gave us our freedom.
Right. So we talked about this when we talked about hell. Okay. So a lot of it is an overlap as far as like consciousness in the afterlife. Like, will you remember? Like, will we have consciousness in the afterlife? So we have 3 passages. We have First Samuel 28 of Solomon and the Witch of Endor. We have Solomon and the Witch of Endor. We have Luke 16, the rich man and Lazarus in Sheol. And then we have, I think it's Revelation chapter 13 or 16, chapter 9, where it talks about those who are persecuted, and they prayed to God for justice upon their death, right? So we have 3 passages where we have dead people having cognitive ability of their life here, of memory. Okay, so again, you asked that with heaven, absolutely. We'll have memory. Okay, now as far as free will in the afterlife, this is what we said, was that in the afterlife, heaven and hell, it's people's choice. Okay, remember, what you choose now is what you will choose in the afterlife. Okay, so the famous C.S. Lewis quote where he says, there's going to be 2 sets of people. One group's going to say to God, your will be done. And another group of people, God's going to say to them, your will be done. Meaning those who are in hell, it's their choice. Okay, now let me go a little deeper with that. When it comes to will, my choice, your choice, choices that we have, wills that we have, stem from desires, okay, or natures inside of us. So in the afterlife, there's a set nature, but our will be determined based upon our nature. Okay, so yes, there will be free will, there will be free autonomy in hell and in heaven or the new earth, but our free will is dependent upon our nature. Meaning, do we have a dead nature, or do we have an alive nature to Christ? Those are things that are going to be set. So those who are in heaven or the new earth are those who have been regenerated. They've been born again. John chapter 3, and their will, their autonomy, stem from that nature, that new nature inside of them. Those who are in hell have dead natures, unregenerated. So as a result, their free will is dependent upon that. Does that make sense? So the famous illustration I gave was the lion, or the lion and the rhino. Okay, so if you look at a lion, it by nature it eats meat, right? It's a carnivore, right? So carnivores by nature eat meat. So if I were to take a salad, a garden salad, and I were to put it in front of a lion's face, it has the ability to swallow that salad, in my hand too, right? It has the ability to eat the salad, but it won't. 10 out of 10 times, 100 out of 100 times, it's going to go for meat. Why? Because by nature, the lion is a carnivore. It eats meat. Its nature doesn't go for a salad. You see that? So it has the ability to eat the salad, but it won't because of the nature. So its will is in consistency with its nature. If I take a rhinoceros and I put meat in front of it, it's not going to eat it. A rhino can kill a lion, but a rhino by nature is what? A herbivore. It eats grass, vegetation. You see that? So 10 out of 10 times you put meat in front of it, it's not going to eat it. Why? Because it will act according to its nature. You see? So those in the afterlife, heaven and hell, have a set nature, but our wills are in consistency to our nature. Does that make sense? So we will have free will, but in consistency with that. So those who are in heaven will not sin. Will not sin because we all have new renewed souls. Does that make sense?
They're not gonna know what sin is. We won't know what sin is.
No one's gonna sin. No one's gonna violate God or anything like that because there's a new nature inside of all of us. Okay? Does that make sense? Yeah. Any questions here? You guys online? No? All right. So we talked about renewed growth. Okay, you will be able to grow in the afterlife. You will be able to learn. Okay, remember, perfection doesn't mean you're complete. Only God is perfect, meaning He knows everything. We don't know everything in the afterlife. We think that, we have this assumption, but we don't. Okay, so if I die and I'm in heaven and Kobe Bryant's there, he's probably going to beat me in basketball. Okay, I'm going to miss shots in my glorified body because I'm morally perfect, but not totally perfect. Okay, okay. Now, also, our renewed relationships. Okay, now we're getting more specific. Renewed relationships, and what I mean by that is this. What about animals? What about those our loved ones? Okay, pets. Okay, so let's talk about animals first. In the new heaven, will there be animals? Okay, everyone's getting excited. I can see everyone's immediately. Will there be animals?
Will there be cats?
Will there be cats in the afterlife? Okay.
Yes.
Will there be dogs in the afterlife? Okay, so animals.
I have a dog.
Okay, when I say renewed relationships, okay, wait. We know this, that Christ, when He comes back, He's going to come back on what?
Horse.
A white horse. Okay, it's an animal, okay. When Christ was here, or no, when God was about to wipe out the earth, He told Adam what? Or He told Noah,
Like 2 by 2.
2 by 2. So animals were involved in creation, right? But even when Adam and Eve, Adam named them, but also the preservation of mankind, or just animals were there. Okay, so it shows there's some form of significance to God. Okay, 2 passages. Isaiah chapter 11. Isaiah chapter 11, verse 6 to 8. Can someone read that? Isaiah chapter 11, verse 6 to 8. And Isaiah chapter 65, verse 25. Isaiah 65, 25. Yeah, Isaiah 11, 6 to 8.
And the wolf will dwell with the lamb, and the leopard will lie down with the kid, and the calf and the young lion and the fatling together. And the little boy will lead them, and the cow and bear will graze. Their young will lie down together, and the lion will eat straw like the ox, and the nursing child will play the hole of the cobra, and the weaned child will put his hand on the viper's den.
Isaiah 65, 25.
The wolf and the lamb will feed together, and the lion will eat straw like the ox, but dust will be the serpent's food. They will neither harm nor destroy on all my holy mountain, says
Wow.
the Lord.
Yeah. Well,
Says the Lord.
funny, I use lions as an illustration. It says lions will eat what? Straw. So we have, yeah, does it say that?
Yeah.
The lion will eat straw. Yeah, like so we have animals with what? Renewed natures.
The wolf and the lamb eat together.
Yeah.
because
So it goes it kind of goes into another question of what were animals like before the fall? Were lions, were tigers, were they just eating grass? And when the fall happened, there was this change that happened, right? But again, this is in reference to the new earth and the new heavens, but I think it's pretty clear that there will be animals in the afterlife. Okay, now, again, I think it's pretty clear from here. Now let's get more specific. What about pets? Right? What about dogs? What about cats? Okay, so, and this is where scholars, they question, there are certain animals that are soulish, they call it. Soulish animals, where an animal has a soul, those animals will be in the afterlife, but there's also animals that don't have souls. And this is where I go into bugs or fish, specific types of fish that don't. Okay? Questions like, will there be new animals in heaven? Right? Will there be new animals in the new earth? Will there be dinosaurs? Will there be extinct animals? And I think what's safe to say is that there are today wild animals, but there's domesticated animals, meaning they assist humans. I think if there's animals in the afterlife, in the new earth, I think the very essence of what they do is their main job is to assist humans. Okay? Okay. One more passage. Can someone, before Psalm 148, verse 10 to 13? Psalm 148, 10 to 13. And then we're going to talk about marriage in heaven.
What is it, 148 what?
Yeah, 148, 10 to 13. Okay, guys, before we read that, I'm going to have you guys here, because we're at a minute now. We'll exit off and we'll come right back on. Okay, so let's all exit off and we'll come right back on. So we'll wait a couple seconds.
Which one was the first one?
You know where we were in Isaiah? In Isaiah 65, 17 through, if you backed up on what we were reading, it describes a new heaven and a new earth.
Yeah, that's why we read it.
No, I mean the whole thing. I'm not talking
Yeah.
about just that one part. It said they will build houses, they will plant vineyards.
The work, yeah.
An old man who does not live out it said, never again will there be an infant who lives but a few days, or an old man who does not live out his years. They will build houses and dwell in them. They will plant vineyards and eat their fruit. No longer will they build houses that others live in, or plant and others eat. So,
Yeah. I mean, the Jews anticipated their reality of the afterlife is physical. Okay.
it
Trish.
says the former things will not be remembered, nor will they come to mind.
So that means we're not gonna remember?
That's probably could be a good thing, because if you're in heaven and your husband or your sons or your daughters are not there, it would be very sad.
Yeah, that was a question I was going to bring up. Like, what about
It'd be very sad.
but we have that in the Bible. We have that in Luke chapter 16 of Lazarus, and he has knowledge of hey, what about these people,
Yeah.
right? But I think even that state of heart, that's probably the biggest question that we have is, what if you're in heaven
Mhm.
and you have knowledge? Say you have a parent or a spouse or someone like your closest friend that's not.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we have to remind ourselves it's their choice.
Yeah.
They want to be in hell.
No, you're not gonna think about that, because he says he wipes away every tear. So you're not
Right.
gonna
So
be
the grief won't be. It's.
Yeah.
Trish,
What, read?
yeah, Psalm 148,
Oh yeah, I started at 10.
10 and 13.
Wild animals and all cattle, small creatures and flying birds, kings of the earth and all nations, you princes and all rulers on earth, young men and women and old men and children. Let them praise the name of the Lord, for his name alone is exalted. His splendor is above the earth and the heavens, and he has raised up for his people a horn, the praise of all faithful servants of Israel, the people close to his heart. Praise the Lord.
Okay, but who's praising the Lord?
Everyone.
Beasts and all livestock, animals, creeping things, flying birds. Okay, so again, the point of that passage is, I think when there's a praise to God, even in the after, the new earth, I think there's going to be that of animals. Okay, so again, I think there's good evidence to say that animals will be in the afterlife. Okay, but not the way we perceive it to be. So I'm not a big cat, I'm not a big dog person, but I think the fears that I have or like the annoyances will just be gone. You know what I mean? It's just, you go into someone's house and you wash your hands, it's all clean, and the dog comes up and licks your hand. And then you're about to eat and you're in front of the dog owner. It's kind of rude, but it's just like, dude, what am I supposed to do? Eat it? Your dog looks, you know. But like the annoyances like that, the shedding, all that stuff. It's gonna be
He comes
gone.
up and licks you in your mouth, around your face.
But you know how, I think it's going to be, like you were saying, one of the questions is, like when we get there, our soul gets there, and then say we get a new body and a new whatever, but we're not going to go like, Mom, where are you?
Oh yeah.
Dad, we may not. I mean, when it says, how are we going to see those people? We won't. Will
Yeah.
we know that that's your friend or that's your mom, that's your dad? Because there's a bazillion people up there.
Right. And
So I don't see how we could say, and we say it all the time, like when someone dies, well, I'll see you in the next life, or I'll see you in heaven or whatever. But will we really? Because how would that happen?
I think we have good evidence from the Bible, that from the 3 passages, that there's always a remembrance. Those 3 passages I quoted. There's a remembrance of the dead person and someone else. Now, what will that look like in the afterlife as far as our renewed selves? I have no clue. I think here's the thing we're all trying to avoid: grief, pain. Yeah, exactly. Or like, and I think we talked about this before. Like, what about broken relationships, right? I think there's people in this life that have offended us. We've offended them in the past, and we've never seen them in years. We never want to see them in years. And what if we all die and we're both in heaven? What's that moment going to look like, right? Or just some nasty falling out you had with a person, like, you know what I mean? It did not go well. It's one of those situations they never want to talk to you again, or you never want to talk to them again.
So
Like, I think those will be completely renewed. My point before was reconciliation, forgiveness can happen today in this life. If it can happen here, it's definitely a picture of the afterlife. Kevin?
So if God forgives you all of your sins, then what happens when he says that if you don't forgive, he won't forgive you? But if he forgives all your sins, wouldn't that include your inability to forgive someone?
Oh, 100%. Like a big indicator, remember, of James 2, of works, as far as how you know someone's soul, forget actions, is their ability to forgive. Someone's ability to forgive. It shows character. Okay? When people don't understand this concept of forgiveness, or just what it does to your soul, unforgiveness, bitterness, resentment, how it creeps in, they think you're like a pushover or a rug or something like that. No, forgiveness is for you, right? Forgiveness is for you. It's for your own liberty. But you, as a believer, if you're truly regenerated, must learn the practice of forgiving someone else, right? What's terrible is when you see churches or families who are claimed they're Christian for years, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. They just never talk to each other. People are related. And something happened when they were younger, right? But they can't forgive, right? That's not heaven. That's hell. You see, it's a glimpse of hell when people can't forgive. What heaven will look like is people know how to forgive and there's utter liberty. Okay? And it can happen today. It can happen today. It happens. Okay? So...
Can you forgive and not want to see the person?
Is that real forgiveness, though? Because why do you not want to see that person? I think there's something negative about that. Pain.
Maybe you don't like them, but you can forgive what they did.
Right. No, I think true forgiveness.
You have to be able to
Yeah,
see
there's none of I don't want to see them, right? But there's difference as far as I can forgive someone, but I don't want to be around them because I don't trust them, right? They keep stealing, or that's different. It's wisdom. But forgiveness, it's a state of your your inner freedom. Okay, let's move on. So animals we talked about. What about relationships? Not just knowing people, but marriage. Will there be marriage and procreation in the afterlife, in the new earth? Okay. I'm going to read two passages. If we can read two passages, can someone read Matthew chapter 22, verse 23 to 33? Matthew, if one of you guys want to read online too, Matthew chapter 22, verse 23 to 33. Matthew 22, 23 to 33. And can someone else read Romans 7, verse 2? Romans chapter 7, verse 2.
Starting at 22? Wait,
If you're Matthew 22,
22.
read 23 to 33.
23.
Yeah. This is Jesus speaking to the Sadducees.
On that day, some Sadducees who say there is no resurrection came to him and questioned him, saying, Teacher, Moses said, if a man dies having no children, his brother as next of kin shall marry his wife and raise up an offspring to his brother. Now, there were 7 brothers with us. The first married and died, and having no offspring, left his wife to his brother. So the second brother and the third down to the 7th. At last of all, the woman died. In the resurrection, therefore, whose wife of the 7 shall she be? For they all had her. But Jesus answered and said to them, You are mistaken, not understanding the Scriptures or the power of God. For in the resurrection they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are like angels in heaven. But regarding the resurrection of the dead, have you not read that which is spoken to you by God, saying, I am the God of Abraham, and the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. God is not the God of the dead, but of the living. And when the multitudes heard this, they were astonished by his teaching.
Okay. So, also, does anyone have Romans 7? No? I'll read that if it. Romans 7 verse 2 says, a married woman is bound by law to her husband while he lives. But if her husband dies, she is released from the law of marriage. Okay, so there's a ceasing of marriage if someone passes. Okay, but back to the text that Virginia read, Matthew chapter 22. So this is the Sadducees. So we know that the Pharisees believed in the resurrection. This is all from Daniel chapter 12 verse 2. Remember we went through the book of Daniel. That idea popped up of a physical resurrection, but the Sadducees did not. So they don't believe in some physical resurrection in the afterlife. And the Sadducees are really trying to question Christ, and they're trying to trick him. Like there's no sincerity. You can just tell. There's no sincerity. They just want to trick him. Okay, but the thing is this: say you're married to someone. Say a woman is married to a guy, okay, and then he dies, and then she marries someone else. So she has 2 husbands, okay. If there's marriage in the afterlife, who will be her husband?
There is no husband and wife in heaven.
And that's kind of what Christ. That's his answer. But the Sadducees, they went off topic, and they're like, what about 7? You could have just said 2. Right, this is kind of like the typical pro-choicer, right? Who's always like, what if someone that's really broke and poor and has no legs and has 10 kids and is on welfare, but then gets raped, right? And they can't move and is paralyzed and quadriplegic, gets raped and has a child. Do you think it's okay to abort the baby? Like, what about that? It's like, it's you're crafting a situation that does not happen in real life, and you're applying it as the standard, right? You hear a lot of those objections, but the Sadducees are doing the exact same thing. They could have said, "What about this person was married to 2 people? Why 7?" But the point is, they're trying to throw them off. But Jesus responds and says, "What? There is no marriage in the afterlife. There is no marriage, right? So, even if you think about it logically, as far as if there is marriage and there is procreation, remember." We are existing forever. We're everlasting creatures. Everlasting means you have a beginning, but you have no end. Okay, our souls are everlasting, meaning that we had a beginning. There's a Genesis point, but there's no end. If there's no end, and there's procreation, we're gonna have so many kids, billions and billions and billions and billions, right? So I think there is no procreation, there is no marriage. Some people even speculate that there's no gender. I'm not saying that, but some scholars will say that we're just humans, okay? Kind of like the angels. Back to that passage, okay? But this is speculation. But I think one thing is for sure is that there is no marriage. There is no procreation in the afterlife, and I think it's pretty clear. Okay? Any questions?
So they're not gonna know who their husbands were or wives.
So, it goes back to consciousness and knowledge and memory. I think you could, and the reason why I say it is because of the 3 passages we talked about, that they know who this person was, but the effects of it won't get to them, right? Like, let's just say there was a divorce. There were 2 genuine born again Christians, and the marriage was just nasty. It ended up terrible. But say they were immature, they were too young, but they mature, they grow up in life, and they both die. And they both see each other in the afterlife. I don't think that 20-year-old, when they were bickering back and forth, will persist in the afterlife. Like, I think they're going to look at one another and be like, yeah, wasn't that silly? But we're renewed, right? Right? So that's...
Yeah, you don't, like, basically if you talk about that, then you talk about, like, then there's a new heaven and a new earth. So then it's like, oh, I wish I could remember the job in El Segundo that I worked my ass off and I have... dust all over my clothes. Like, oh, I wish I could remember that. It's like God takes away all the, the bad memories and all the dumb crap that we did on earth, because it's like it's like, oh, that's the fallen world. He doesn't want any of that to be in his new world.
Right. So remember, the principle is this: how it ought to be, how it ought not to be. That's it. So this world, like Genesis 2, how it was supposed to be, how it wasn't supposed to be. So like what Kevin is saying, that's how it's not supposed to be, as far as the fall and divorce and like conflict and lack of restoration and envy. It's not supposed to be that way, right? When I look at my phone and I see these lootings, I see these robberies like in broad daylight, it just, a part of me is appalled. I can't believe we're experiencing this. I really can't, I can't believe it. But at the same time, that desire, that ache, is a plea of the new heaven. Because in the new heaven, we're not going to see any of that. That is a picture of hell. Total anarchy, rebellion. It's a picture of hell. Lawlessness. But remember, it's how it ought not to be. No one should be assaulted. No one should be robbed. It's not supposed to be that way. Right? It's like, remember what I told you when my dad passed, and I was talking to Lindsay on the phone, when we were talking, and we were just talking, she lost her dad before mine, but she said, it's not supposed to be this way. It's not supposed to be this way. When she said that, it got me, but I couldn't logically put it together. As time went by, I put the piece together. I'm like, it makes sense, right? It's not supposed to be that way. Death, right? Okay. So we talked about. Go ahead.
I think we have to, like husband and wife, or when it says he's going to build us houses and stuff. Who are we living with?
Right.
Are we all living alone? I think we just have to, you can think about it, but we just have to be ready to accept whatever he has set up.
Yeah. Whatever it is, it's going to be good.
Whatever it is going to be good, and it's
What if I'm your roommate?
You'd be building her house.
Yeah, you'll fix my house.
I need to like go do something for work real fast. So I don't want to like expedite it, but I kind of like I wanted to. I'm not trying to like.
We have 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
Yeah.
All right. So last point, okay, so remember we talked about restored, renewed relationships. Okay. Last is and this is the most important thing, most important point of anything we've talked about in the afterlife. It's a renewed relationship with God. That's the most important. It's a renewed relationship with God. On this planet, our understanding of God is limited. Okay, we've had dark nights of the soul, which means your mind believes in God, but your soul is in utter torture. Okay, many people throughout human history have experienced this, but this is a result of the fall. Okay, so remember, we talked about the presence of God, how Eden, there was the Garden of Eden, and then there was a fall. But remember, the very Garden of Eden was a temple. The Garden of Eden was a temple. It was a sanctuary. There was God and man together. There was cherubims guarding it, right? But after the fall, there was a tabernacle. There was a temple of Solomon. There was a temple of Zerubbabel. There was a temple of Herod. There was Christ as a tabernacle. There's us right now as the church as a temple. But it's always the presence of God, okay? But it's limited, okay? It's limited. There was this notion in the Bible that you could not see the face of God and live. So in other words, you could not fully know God. You can know God, but not fully because of our fallen state. Okay? Moses says in Exodus 33, Moses says, please show me your glory. And God says, I will make all my goodness pass before you. But he says, you cannot see my face, for man cannot see me and live. Okay? So remember, there's limitations to it. Another verse, 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 12, the Apostle Paul, the famous love passage, okay? He says this, when he's talking about the face of God, he says this, for now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. So right now, we're seeing God dimly, okay? Let's be honest, how many times have we prayed to God for something or asking God for even intimacy with him? It's like Saul's relationship with God. It's like God didn't answer. It's like, where's God? And that is a result of the fall. Okay? But remember this, in the afterlife, in the new earth, you will physically see God. Okay? Whether that's a spirit, but you'll physically see Jesus. But your knowledge, your understanding of God will be perfected. Okay? This, well, why we meet every week and we study the Bible is to get to grasp a knowledge of God, an understanding of God. But we do this because we're in a limited state. Right? Even on a practical level, our hearts feel distant from God. At times our heart feels close to God. But the point is, we have limited understanding of who God is. In the afterlife, we'll have a perfected vision of who God is. Okay? Revelation chapter 22, verse 4. Then they will see his face. Then they will see the face of God. So we go to Genesis 1 to 2. Adam and Eve are walking with God. After the fall, that was it. And then we go back to Revelation chapter, the very last chapter of the Bible. They will see the face of God. It begins with the presence of God. The fall happened, distortion of a relationship. In the end, there's a renewed relationship with God.
But just to clarify, the face of God is Jesus. Like, we see Jesus. We don't actually see God. God's invisible. So how do you see God? Like, you see, Jesus is the exact... he's the image of the invisible God. So it's like, how do you see God if he's invisible?
I was referring, so the Father. So John 4:24, God is spirit, right? So and I'm not trying to be specific. I'm being very general here.
Yeah.
But again, is God a spirit, like, kind of like in Star Wars, where you see just the image of, because you can kind of see through them. Because God doesn't have a body. The Father doesn't have a body. The Spirit doesn't have a body, right? The Son does, but not the Father, not the Son. So when Jesus is speaking to the Father, or when you hear the Father from heaven in Matthew's Gospel say, "Behold, my beloved Son, with whom I'm well pleased," that's what I'm talking about. So, as far as will God be an old man, or will be, most scholars believe that God is young, right? But as far as the specifics, I have no clue. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just kind of a weird concept, just because like Hollywood and all their dumb like movies.
The Renaissance.
It kind of corrupts my understanding of seeing the Father, because it's like I don't want to see just some like, some Hollywood production. Like, if you're actually going to see the Father, it says he lives in unapproachable light. So it's like you like, I don't want to be disappointed. It's like
what was that film with Christian Bale where he was Moses? I think it's called Lords and Gods. It's where he's Moses, but the burning bush was a little boy. Now, that's what they used. It was a boy. Like when they had God, it was a little boy speaking. So, again, this is just Hollywood, right? So we're at 8 o'clock. Let me close by saying this. So we talked about the new earth, okay? The new earth as being renewed. Everything is renewed. It's first a renewed physical state, a renewed work environment, a renewed emotional state, a renewed class system or rewards, a renewed sense of growth, renewed relationships, and last, a renewed relationship with God. Okay? Now, have you ever heard the question of someone will say, we talked about heaven and hell, so this is our 9th lesson on heaven and hell, but when people bring up hell, they'll say, how can an all-loving God allow people to go to a place such as hell? You ever hear that?
Yeah.
Right?
We do.
But I can flip the same question but you assume that the attributes of God is just love, but God is just too, and I can ask the exact same question: how can an all just God allow anyone to go into heaven? How can an all just God allow anyone to be in the new earth? Did you know that if every single one of us were to be born, live this life, and Jesus never died on the cross, he never did, but we were to live this life and say we were to be Jewish, we were to be Muslim, or whatever religion, not Christian, but if we were to live this life and die, and every single one of us would go to that place called hell, every single human being, past, present, future, God would be completely just to do such a thing like that. God would be completely just. You always hear the objection from people, how can an all-loving God allow people to go to hell? Well, God is just. So for him to allow anyone into heaven, anyone into the new earth, is his grace and his love towards us. Okay? Remember that. Heaven and hell is a balance of God's love and his justice. And that is within all of us. We're all image bearers. Okay? Whatever political position you hold to, whatever theology, justice and love reside in your heart. Right? You see snatch and grabs, you want justice. These people are being led on the street. That's injustice. You want justice, right? 2020, people were screaming, right? No justice, no peace. Black Lives Matter. Even whatever position, it's a sense of justice inside people's hearts. And that is a cry for a place called hell, because that's where the justice of God is. But there's this place called heaven, and that's where the grace of God, the love of God, the mercy of God is expressed. Okay? So we see all that. Okay? All right. We're at 8 o'clock right now. We're going to do communion. If any of you guys want to join us for communion, you're more than welcome to. If not, so I know. But we'll pass it around. And this concludes our lesson.